we have David McLeod, and we confirmed the pronunciation of his last name just prior to beginning here. And as he described it, it is pronounced as McDonald's if they made rain. So McLeod. David is with Coro, Cybersecurity. I'll leave it up to him to give an introduction for himself and for Coro.
Daniel, I think you nailed it. I couldn't ask for a better introduction. No, great to be with you. I appreciate you having me. As you said, I'm David McLeod. I sit in Washington, D.C. As you can probably hear it in my voice, you don't get to sound this pretty growing up in the nation's capital. I'm from Carolina originally. All my family is from there. I like to joke and say I'm the only Southerner to willingly move north in the history of our nation. But it's DC's been good to me, man. And I've always supported partners in the Mid-Atlantic. Currently, I'm with Coro. We're a cybersecurity firm. At a high level, we are a cybersecurity platform. We are currently the only provider that provides cybersecurity on a platform level, end-to-end, truly our product. So it's a exciting place to be. It's a fun company, and it's great to support our clients and our partners.
And I think that's a good starting point to talk about the uniqueness of Coro, because I think one of the barriers to entry with cybersecurity, because if you ask any business owner, of course, they're going to say, yes, it's better if I had cybersecurity than I don't. But I think one of the common misconceptions is it's too expensive and it's too difficult to manage. It's this mysterious thing to a lot of folks, and they don't really know how to go about it. But I think if I read correctly, Coro's growth year over year is something like 400% the last 3 or 4 years over, and you got several hundred million in funding. And from my understanding, the reason why is because you sort of answer a lot of those things. And one of the the leading causes for that is the cost and affordability with a modular platform. So can you talk a little bit about what a modular platform means and speak to some of the benefits of how that goes, as well as the cost aspect and kind of breaking that barrier of entry to the SMB and mid-market level businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned a lot of things there. So starting with the Coro side, you're absolutely right. It's incredible to see, and those numbers are like staggering when you hear them, when you see the growth of our organization. We're the 39th fastest growing company across any vertical in North America. We're the number one fastest growing cybersecurity firm in the world. And I mean, you see that with our investors and with our the money we have in the bank. It's a very fun time to be at Coro, and it's exciting to see the difference, both that we're doing for our clients, but also internally our growth as an organization and the maturity of our product. Now, you mentioned the platform approach, and I think that's probably what makes Coro the most interesting and the most effective for most of our clients. You hit the nail on the head. Cybersecurity is call it the paralyzing amount of choice in the market. It's like the Hydra. There are so many different heads. It's a multifaceted area. It's not like, hey, I need an internet connection, give me a circuit, or hey, I need voice, give me dial tone, or like this, like I need a collaboration tool. There are so many different facets of cybersecurity, and in order to have an effective posture, or in order to effectively protect your business, you can't neglect any of them. So it's for someone, and no one's an expert in all this because it's constantly evolving, can be, as I mentioned, that paralysis of choice. It can, if you're looking as a mid-market provider, or certainly on the SMB side, and you're just like, hey, I'm a marketing person, or I'm a business operation, a COO, but I also have to carry the cybersecurity. I also have to do our IT. I also have to manage, my regular business, but I need to protect this business. How do I do that? And Coro lets organizations find that easy button where we can cover 90 to 95% of anything that they would need. But specifically to your point on the modularity, if they have an affinity for a particular vendor, or if they have a solution in place for one of those cybersecurity areas, we don't have to displace that. They can choose their own adventure with us. They can say, hey, I want these 5, 6, 7 modules. I want these 8 or 9 modules, but I don't want this one because I have that covered. And then that also gives you as a partner a very easy upsell, because when they're at a contract with that provider, then they already use Coro. They're already in our ecosystem. They already like the product. We're a vetted, trusted vendor. It's already supporting their business, and there's no new deployment, right? It's the same endpoint agent. It's the same dashboard, single pane of glass. They just enable that module, and boom, they're protected. So it's instant revenue for you, but it's also instant protection for them, and just very clean, very simple. So it's unique in that sense. There is currently no provider other than Coro that can do that. So it's always exciting when you can, when you can truly differentiate yourself in a very crowded market.
Yeah, no, it definitely stands out, and it caught my eye. When you hear a pitch, you hear the value prop, and sometimes things just ring so clearly. That's why I think Coro's doing so well and has been doing so well and will continue to do so. I talk about this because I'm now an entrepreneur for the past several months, and I'm balancing budget because, I cashed out my 401k to do this, and I have a 3.5-month-old baby up there, and the costs keep climbing. Yeah. And every time I take on a new venture, I'm always thinking about, like, okay, well, is this really going to get me what I need? Is it going to help me in my business? And from a consultant standpoint, as well as from a business owner, it's always thinking about, is this going to help me make money, or is this going to help me save money? So I wanted to talk about how Coro is, typically not going to make you money, but there's certainly the risk factor, right? So how does Coro potentially save a organization money?
Well, when I look at having a conversation with anybody, and this is true in my personal life, it's true in our business life, everything in my mind can be boiled down to time, effort, and money. Is it going to save you time? Is it going to reduce you effort? Is it going to potentially save you money or make you money? And if I can save you in any one of those areas, then it's worth having a conversation. If I can save you in 2 or maybe 3 of them, then it's a no-brainer, right? And Coro is unique in the sense that we really are set up to do all of them. And part of that is the economies of scale. If you go out to the market and you say, okay, I'm going to choose a best of breed provider for these 6, 7 different areas that I have to cover, that I have to protect in cybersecurity. Okay, you can do that, but you're going to pay, not just the 7 different invoices for those organizations, but it's the time of managing them. You have to monitor, patch, software update, 6 tools. Every day you've got to, don't you think about the workflow, you got to log in, sort through false positives, weed through what are actually critical activities you need to take action on. And like heaven forbid you want some sleep or you want to spend some time with Emmett, right? Like we all need to take vacation. We have other things that that consume our lives and we have to dedicate our lives to. And so in that environment, something is going to slip through the cracks. And it doesn't matter if you have 2 or 3 people, like you can't manage this unless you're like a Visa or a MasterCard with 500 people under a CISO. There's no way you can staff this round the clock to have everyone working in each one of those tools. So with the Coro, you bring everything together under one environment, under one dashboard. You see everything unified, exactly what's mission critical, what you need to take action on. But the beautiful thing is it's AI and machine learning enhanced. So you have this intelligent automation. You can preset actions. The system already knows, like, if you download a virus or if someone tries to upload malware or ransomware to your environment, well, the system doesn't need your permission to say, wait a second, let's stop that immediately. Let's quarantine this, let's isolate this device and prevent that from spreading, right? But there are other things that you might, for example, if you put in geofencing where, you, Daniel, you log in from Long Island every day, but maybe you logged in from Florida one morning. Well, did your family just take a vacation down there or someone trying to breach your account, right? So there are things that we can set up there where do you want to set that up as an alert feature to stop that? Or do you want to absolutely shut it down? Like, no, Daniel should never leave never leave the state of New York ever, right? Then, that can happen. But also, when you look at there's a monetary component too. Buying all these different tools, I mentioned the time, I mentioned the effort to administer them. But when you're buying 6 different platforms versus buying one, there is almost always going to be a cost savings there. So less time, less effort, and less money. And what I like to say too, when we talk about security, complexity is the enemy of security. You could have the fanciest, most elaborate Rube Goldberg machine of cybersecurity, but that also means there are a bunch of weak points. Like if any one of those things falls off or doesn't work perfectly, then now you're at risk. So by pulling that all together, by bringing it all under one platform, one umbrella, that one place for you to live and breathe in, it makes your life a lot easier. And then, you get the added benefit of extra security, save time, save money. And, hopefully that's the trifecta, right? We do all of them.
Then there's the response time, like the speed of response, right? If you have that agglomerated Rube Goldberg, you described it as you have different teams. We talked the last time about the analogy. If you owned a physical premise and imagine you had one security team that was at the back door, one at the front door, one in the driveway, one out in the street around the corner, one staking out in the car, and then everywhere in between, all the windows, all the doors. It's like, how do they communicate when something happens? So there's a synergy of the tools with one platform that when something happens, it can take care of it across the board and you don't miss anything. Talk about what happens on the back end with the Coro platform and what role the administrator or the business owner or whoever is going to be monitoring this is, what action they take versus what action Coro could take, and maybe the option there.
Yeah, great question. And I love your analogy, right? You've got this property you've got to protect, and you've got all these different ingress and egress points, and everyone, in order to have, a safe perimeter, has to be on alert. But what happens when, someone tries to breach one area? Are they communicating effectively? Are they reallocating resources to buttress that area? I like that. I might steal that from you moving forward. But so I think the short answer to that is, when you have a bunch of different and folks that work in security have experienced this, these security tools don't always play nice together. So the more agents you download, the agent is the program that's supporting that, whatever product you bought. The more of those you load on the device, it eats up RAM, it eats up resources on the end machine, but oftentimes there is a non-synergistic kind of combative nature sometimes, and there's some known effects of this. You see some of this in the market, obviously CrowdStrike and Microsoft, you saw that happen a few months ago, but there are some known kind of challenges where there are just several different agents that just do not play nice together. And when you load them on the machine, they actually negate each other. So by minimizing the amount of overhead on the device, but also simplifying the actual endpoint agent to one endpoint agent, you actually get a much better performance. And then when you talk about the administrative end on the back end, for you as Daniel, going to one central repository, seeing everything at a glance, seeing everything that's affected, because all these areas are, as you mentioned, they're interconnected, whether it's an email threat, whether it's a data governance, whether it's, a virus or endpoint, or all of these are connected. You have to have them working together to give you that one solidified approach. So by pulling that together, we enhance the security, also simplify it. And then for the administrative piece, it comes down to how much time out of your day do you have to sit in front of this machine? And there are some things you can say, reload this machine or this platform to take an action in certain areas. That's what we would call our rules of engagement. So we can have the platform step in and assist you in these certain areas, but also we have a fully managed team. So if you don't want to ever touch the security and you're just like, hey, Coro, I want you to handle this, I don't have the time or energy to deal with this, our team is 24/7, 365 global. So we can give you on any of these agents, any of these different areas, different modules we talk about, we can fully manage that from our side to where you don't have to even, pick up the phone or send an email or even log into anything. So it can be really, really powerful where, you sit down in front of a client, they're like, I'm a little overwhelmed. I have all these different things. I don't know these acronyms. I don't know where to start. And then to be able to turn around and serve up, here's one solution that will encompass all of that, and you never have to lift a finger to even manage it, it's pretty compelling for, I think, a lot of that mid-market space. And certainly, as you mentioned, the SMB as well.
Yeah, it is. And I try to relate all these conversations back to some level of personal experience, as well as the conversations that I've had in the past and currently having with clients. And you mentioned time management several times in there. I think it's incredibly important. I mean, my day, we were talking just before we started recording here that I was on a fishing trip just yesterday, and I got home, and last night I set my goals for today and what I was going to accomplish. And then I woke up, I had to feed my baby, and I was making my wife breakfast, and then I was setting up the podcast and doing everything else and showering and shaving, taking care of everything. By the time I knew it, it was 11 o'clock, and I had spent 4 hours of my morning. So not everyone, especially in a business management role or any sort of executive role, is going to have the time to do that. So it's great that you have the options for support.
I really like your analogy about the protecting the perimeter of a home, because the way, and I've kind of thought about a similar vein of that before, hackers are looking for the low-hanging fruit, the easiest path, right? And with enough, we keep going back to that time, effort, and money. With enough time, effort, and money, anyone can be hacked. That's just the reality. But these bad actors, these malicious folks, they're looking for the most juice with the easiest squeeze. So it's like, I kind of think of it kind of exactly what you just said. They're just walking down the street, right? They're like jiggling your doors, the door lock. They're checking your windows, the window unlocked.
Yeah.
Do the motion sensors of your floodlights come on? Do you have a scary dog? Like, what is the easiest house to go after, to target?
We've talked about our dogs, and it's definitely not mine. My two mini dachshunds, that they think that they're Dobermans, but they're these tiny little dogs. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I did want to help along this conversation of this topic you were mentioning, because I'm looking on my other screen over here at some of the cybersecurity stats, and you were talking about, who's the easy target, who's the low-hanging fruit. And I think this is a major misconception, that you have this, $1 to $5 million a year small medium business, and they have 20 employees, and like, well, why would they come after me? And this is what they might be missing, is that these are the easy targets, because a lot of the times they're using free tools. They have a lack of preparedness. Sometimes they don't have security awareness training. These are the ones that have the biggest holes. These are the easy doors to walk through. You're walking down the street, like you said, you're not going to go and try to attack Fort Knox. It's going to be the harder target.
100% agree with you. And I heard someone mention that phenomenon specifically, and they called it security through obscurity. Like, we're too small, we're too we're inconsequential. No one's going to go after us. But the reality is, as you said, that's the perfect target, because a lot of these attacks they're not like thought out, targeted attacks. It's like a giant, you're on your fishing trip. It's a giant net you just cast in the ocean. You just blast out an email campaign to tons of different aliases and emails, and you include, a phishing attack, or you include some sort of malware virus, and what unlucky person just happens to go for that hook and just get ensnared, right?
Yeah.
And, or maybe it's, they're buying, because once you have one breach, I should back up, because, when you talk about the breach, what a breach is really going after is your data, right? Whether that's PHI, PCI, PII, and by PCI, I mean personal credit card information, PII, personal identifiable information, PHI, personal health information, or intellectual property customer data, because that's what's valuable. That's what the hackers want to sell on the black market. And then if they get a breach into your system, well, now they have credentials and passwords, right? So that's valuable to the next person that wants to hack you, especially if you're not doing regular maintenance and requiring people to refresh their passwords and continually harden that network. So when you have that sort of attack, it's just someone bought a list, or they just generated a list of themselves, and they just blasted it out to the whole world. There is no thought that goes into this. There is no in a hacker's mind, there's no ideal client portfolio. They're not looking like who's big enough, who's small enough. It's just like anyone's a target. Anyone's a target if you're willing to take the bait. And so it's super important that you have, going back to your house analogy, you got to have your perimeter. You got to have all your locks, your windows battened down, your locks locked, the alarm system on. You got to have the lights going and the dog barking in the background to make it look like you're home. Because if not, like those are one little, and it just takes, going back to, you mentioned user awareness training, it just takes one person, right? And no one's perfect. Like, you think of how much time we spend on our cell phones, kind of absent-mindedly, sometimes scrolling through email or trying to multitask. And maybe you're not giving an email that pops up on your phone the attention it deserves, or the ultra like magnifying glass inspection. So having a platform that's able to mitigate those threats before they even get to your users, or prepare your users for the time where they are presented with those threats, it's important. And you got to do, there's no one that's better than the other. You got to do all of them.
I was jotting down a couple of notes as you were talking, because it actually corrected myself from earlier conversations, because we were talking about, making money and saving money. And then I was thinking about, what if you were able to communicate to your customers that their personal data is secure, that you have a cybersecurity policy in place and you are protecting their data, because that could be a differentiator in business in and of itself. I don't remember all the stats, and they're constantly changing, but the percentages are always ridiculously high. It's something like 70 to 80% of SMBs don't recover after a cybersecurity attack. And you look at, again, figures that range from 3 million to 10 million for the cost and the damage to the reputation and all that. So that's where it saves money, because even if you do recover, it's how likely is your business to gain or regain customers now that you're known as the business that was hacked, your credit card data being out, and that's another whole aspect to it.
It's staggering, isn't it? I mean, can you imagine right now, because you have a small business, you're starting out building this yourself. What if you got hit with a $3 million cash flow liability?
Yeah, I tell you this right now, it's not happening from my side. So I fall into the category of not making it out.
Right. It's just, and that's when you have, and there's so much pressure that falls on you when you are an entrepreneur and you're starting out. Because now, I mean, yeah, you have your family that you have to feed, and you have a growing boy, but also you have your employees' families to feed, and you're making payroll, and you're looking out for them. And it's a lot on your shoulders. And I think the inclination for a lot of folks is, how can I grow my business? How can I scale my business? How can I sell more? And they're not really thinking about, I know I need to invest in technology, or I need to invest in some cybersecurity. It's almost like it doesn't even conceptually come into play, because you're just trying to get the plane off the ground. You're trying to build momentum. You're trying to grow sales, and you don't think about, like, this one area could completely, surface to air missile like my entire organization.
Could kill your plans. That the entire business can go down.
And that's where I think it's almost overwhelming. And I go back to that paralysis of choice. If you just type in, if you're a business owner and you're like, okay, I know I need to do something, let me just go to Google, like, what are the top cybersecurity threats? It will explode if you read the search results that come up, because there are so many areas. It's like, how do I manage this? Well, I thought I could do this, but no, there's no way I have time for that now. And I certainly don't have the budget. And it's almost just like you said, put your head in the sand. Well, I'm too small. They probably won't notice me. I'll just fly under the clouds. Like, it'll be okay. Right. But with Coro, you don't have to do that. You can get a full protection. You can get a completely hardened cloud infrastructure, data regulation, and also user behavior analytics and user protection, while also breaking your budget and not completely killing your administrative workload for you or one of your other employees. So I try to say it's the easy button. I know some people don't believe it until they actually see it. But one of the other big things that I'm a proponent of is, we, as a company, I always work to put my client in a proof of concept before they buy from me. This is a funny story. I had a client a couple months ago. We did the demo. They're like an organization that runs they're kind of like a nonprofit for nonprofits. They have a bunch of different member organizations, and they support a wide swath of organizations that fall up under them. And so they have kind of this this deregulated structure where they have devices at all these different locations, but really just a small staff looking after them. And so we showed them the platform. The guy was like, "This is great. I want to buy it today." And I told him, I said, "I promise I will let you," his name was David too. I said, "David, I promise I'll let you buy this, but let me give you a test drive first." Because how many times, like you think about in your life, Daniel, how many times have you sold a product or a solution to a client and the salesperson said, "It's going to do all these things and it's going to work this way and you're going to love it." And then they go to implement it and it turns out the customer doesn't love it, or it doesn't work the way that the salesperson said it was going to work, or it doesn't work the way the client had imagined it working, right?
Yeah.
Then by giving a POC, what I want to do is I want to show them this is live in your environment. This is literally how Coro is behaving and what we're catching. So that takes the guesswork out of it. That takes the what if out of it. They see exactly what we're doing and how we're making an impact. And I've had multiple instances where we've done a POC and we have caught things that would have torpedoed the client, from viruses and malware, but also user behavior. Like we had a client, this was hilarious. I had a client come to me after we did a POC and he said, "Dave, you made me had a tough conversation." I said, "What did I do?" And and apparently his right-hand man, like this guy that had been like on his IT team for years, like one of his best techs, was sending out his resume to competitors and our system flagged it because it was PII. It was personal identifiable information. And so he was like, this was like his best friend. They'd worked together for years, had no idea.
Cool.
Guy was completely floored. On the other hand, like on a more kind of, like, because that was just kind of funny. The guy was like, looking at a different organization. But this, on the other hand, we had a sales organization where there was a salesperson that was applying to a competitor. He downloaded hundreds and hundreds of customer files and then left, went to this other organization, took that data with him. But because of the Coro platform, our client was able to prove you stole this data at this time. It was time stamped by his cloud credentials. They ended up taking that to litigation and they won because of our reporting software. So he's a customer for life. He loves it.
It's a wide variety of reactions there.
And that's not even, and you go back to like the user awareness training and the user behavior, that's not even an external threat. That's an internal threat to your data that you would have. A lot of times organizations have no visibility into that, have no idea that's happening until they get a tool like Coro that we actually have some regulation and control over that.
Yeah, I think cybersecurity is unique in conversations. I was thinking about so many things when you were talking there because the stories really make me think, and you're a very good storyteller. I always think about sales when you talk about sales because I'm a technology advisor, right? I have conversations. At the end of the day, we're both there to make money, but it doesn't benefit me if you can't show them it's going to work. I think about that Matilda movie a long time ago. I think it was like Danny DeVito when he was like pouring sawdust into the engine or something like that, and he tells him the car so it works for like a mile, and he gets off the lot and it like shuts down. Like that's just not how it works. This is technology, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And proof of concepts being so easy to do with Coro, because I've seen yourself and Leo turn up the platform and just like it's clicks of a button. This is not hardware that's being sent out to deploy. It's software that is just enabled and it just works.
That was the biggest thing that kind of blew my mind coming over here. So I have spent almost my entire career in traditional telecommunications, networking. I've done some UC, CC collab, but most of it in the networking side. And speaking, just to go back to your initial point about selling the right way, you always want to sell the right way and I used to say this all the time when I was, even just back then when I was just doing internet circuits, we're at a minimum 1-year contract. Typically we're doing 2 or 3 or sometimes 4. And I would tell folks all the time, I'm like, look, it is not in my interest to tell you anything that is not 100% unvarnished true, because if not, like we're now stuck in this relationship for another 3 years. And if you hate me from day one, it's going to be a long 3 years for me. I want you to be very happy with what you get, because because in that environment, I not only was a salesperson, but I was also became the account manager and the lifecycle manager for that entire time. They were with our company. So I was very motivated, and I wanted people to know, I want to find a way to work with you. I hopefully want to, find a way for us to do business together. But if not, that's okay, because if it's not the right fit, it's not worth it for either of us to go down this road. So, I mean, yeah, the POC just selling the right way, selling honestly and ethically is a big part of what I do and a big part of what we do as a company, because we do want to be with you for the long haul. We want to grow with you. We want to enable your organization to continue focusing on your business and all those things that make you money, while also protecting that money, that intellectual property, those customer bases that you're building. But then the other side of that, I just blanked on what I was going to say. The second part of your Matilda thing. Shoot, I completely forgot what it was, Daniel. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I can support you on this, and if it comes back, feel free to interrupt. But I did want to dial it back actually to an earlier part of the conversation and offer a little bit of an alternative viewpoint, because you were talking about how these hackers and these bad actors, they are taking the shotgun approach because they don't care. They will just, I mean, I think about it as a salesperson, how easy it is to go out and find customer data just that's publicly available to then contact them. And you can put that into a system these days that can do these mass email blasts and cold calls and all this other stuff, which I don't do. And I don't do any of that cold outreach anymore. Certainly not in that way, but you can set up systems with this, and it makes it so much easier today with AI. And I don't want to spend a ton of time on AI, even though everybody wants to talk about it, because the basics and the fundamentals are, more important than just talking about AI. But you can take that information and then work it with a web scraper and set it up with ChatGPT and say, write me custom scripts for emails that will sound like they're coming from a person that I got a text just the other day, and it was from the CEO of the last company that I worked at. And it was clean. It was easy. It was like, hey, this is so-and-so. And, do you have time to talk about this? And it was talking about something that was on my LinkedIn, and it was on his LinkedIn. And I messaged him, right away on LinkedIn, because I was like, there's no reason why the CEO of this company is reaching out to me via text, but you never know. And I think as things get more and more complex, the risk, specifically through email and social engineering, is going to only keep increasing.
Yes, and 100% agree with you. And remind me after I answer this question, I wanted to go back to the ease of deployment. We talked about the API driven. That's what I was going to talk about. But for what you just mentioned specifically, that is exactly why I moved to work for Coro. I wanted to be in cybersecurity because, people talk about AI, and I think people think about AI in terms of predictive text and I guess more like writing sort of thing. But really, I envision AI on a crash course with cybersecurity, because when you have devices and machines that are able to do something 10,000, 100,000, millions of times in a minute, in a second, and then you add the machine learning component and the AI portion of that. And then now when you're able to do, as you said, like voice modulation and predictive behavior and the social engineering aspect about this, okay, everybody knows the Nairobi Prince and you're his long lost nephew, right? I mean, no one's falling for that anymore, or hopefully you're not falling for that. But to your point, these attacks are getting extremely compelling, extremely targeted. I read, there are a few security sites that I follow, and I read there's this current kind of scheme that's going around that I don't think I can talk about it on the podcast, but it's like a blackmail scam, and in order to make it more compelling, the subject is, I'm going to release this on you, or I'm going to release this sort of thing. Would it be better to have a conversation at insert your address, and then using Google Maps, it shows a picture of where you live.
Wow.
And it's
creepy.
Unless you pay this ransom, and that's a super basic one. When you go into yours was way more interesting. Hey, CEO, high level contact, and also referencing something you just posted within the last week.
Yeah.
These sort of attacks are just going to continue to intensify, to ramp up, and also to get more and more compelling, because it's not a user sitting there thinking this up of like, what is this storyline? We now have like a chat GPT or like a Google Bard that's combing through every story that's ever been written in human history, every movie that's ever been produced, and like, what are these trends and like what elicits human response or human connectedness, and how can I plug that into this user in this environment? So yeah, it is scary, and that is, I 100% agree with you, Daniel. That's why you need a tool that is also backed by, it's kind of like that spy versus spy. If you're going up against that, you need a really strong guy on your side. So with the same AI and like machine learning that's outward facing, shielding your organization.
I like the spy versus spy. I'm going to take that one from you.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm here to give you your reminder to jump back into the ease of deployment with the API driven deployment, and then I actually thought of something as you were talking.
Yeah. It's crazy. So that was the piece that just blew my mind. My second week on the job at Coro, I closed my first deal. It was a Tuesday, and it was a one-call close. I've had several one-call closes in my career, Daniel, but not for many, 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 many years. That was when I was working at Allied, and we were a regional fiber provider. We had like a lit building, so it was like, hey, I'm moving in. Can you get me service, right now? And so that was like, yes, we'll get it done. But it's been a long time. It's probably been 7 or 8 years since I've had a one-call close. And that was my second week on the job at Coro. It was for a 65-ish person nonprofit down in Louisiana. They were actually looking at CrowdStrike, and CrowdStrike wasn't getting them the time of day, wasn't getting back to them. So just, right place, right time. They were ready to buy. We were able to give them exactly what they were looking for. And this was before the CrowdStrike debacle, which was great, because then they were like, oh, we definitely made the right choice. We already liked you, but now we really, really like you a few months later. But anyway, Thursday, so 2 days after it had been fully installed, fully onboarded, fully protected, and that partner was paid on that deal the next month. And my head was spinning. I was like, how is this possible? Like, this is less than 72 hours from the time I had my first conversation with them to when they're already fully installed, protected. And it's because of that AI deployment. We are overlaying directly into the Microsoft Office 365 or Google Workspaces or any other cloud or several other cloud applications, Drive, Salesforce, Slack, et cetera. And those are just an API plugin. So you enter your global admin credentials or your super admin credentials. It syncs with all the users in your organization. You decide exactly who you want to protect, and then boom, that's cloud security. And then on the agent side, the endpoint, it's one endpoint agent. So it's super lightweight, super easy to install. You can push it out to those devices you need, or you can use an RMM tool to mass deploy it across all the devices in your organization. And you're talking at that point, the cloud protection piece happened less than 5 minutes, all your users. The RMM tool is just enough to push that out and the users to restart their device. So you're looking at, really, if everyone's sitting there ready to do this, you can be fully on board in 15 minutes. And I don't know of any tool or of any environment that can have that big of a splash in your environment with such a little lift. Like it is so easy.
It's incredible. And then it took me longer to set up my digital business card than it does to set up the cybersecurity platform wild. That could be giving me a hell of a lot more ROI. Although I do love Popple cards. I'm actually reviewing in this newsletter, so full transparency on there. But actually, all right. So you mentioned 2 things here, because I do want to make a little bit of a transition towards the channel side and maybe some more personal philosophy questions. We've covered a good amount on the cybersecurity front. Before I do that, though, I wanted to talk about, because you mentioned Gmail and you mentioned Microsoft 365, and I think that there's also that disconnect in some business owners' minds, or not that they lack the awareness, but they don't fully appreciate the amount of risk on a BYOD type business where you have individuals that are now working from home and they're out in the office and they're using the same device to scroll on Instagram and shop on, Alibaba or whatever. What's the other one? That's Temu or something like that. And you're getting these links and to be compromised through one of those means, or any other on your phone, on your personal device, that can then gain access through to your email apps. And these are the same pathways that can be taken. And that's why it's super important. We talk a lot about email, but I think that's just one super important piece that is overlooked. It's the personal devices.
I completely agree with you. And it's because of the nature of work has changed over the past several years, obviously from the pandemic. And used to, and you remember this, I used to do this. We'd all commute into an office. We'd set up, we'd work there in that office. So in the office environment, you've got one big internet circuit connection coming in. There's a big honking firewall there, and all your IT guys, all those devices are protected behind that network. If you did take a device home, it's a company issued device, probably set up through some sort of like VPNing into that server, either clouded or local on site. But now no one works that way, or not no one, but fewer people work that way. So you have folks that are taking maybe a company issued device, but they're not connecting to company sanctioned internet. They're connecting to hotel Wi-Fi or airline Wi-Fi or wherever, Starbucks, wherever they are. And then also to the other point you mentioned, a lot of these are just personal devices. People are just saying, here, I'm going to give you your Office 365 credentials. Just use your own, use your own cell phone, use your own laptop, whatever you want. And that is terrifying. If I were an organization, if I were an IT guy, I would get zero sleep ever in that environment. But really, if you're a business owner, you should get zero sleep, because now you have just introduced dozens, potentially, depending on how big your organization is, hundreds or thousands of additional entry points into your network that you have no visibility over, no control over, and is going to spread like wildfire as soon as any one of them are compromised. And so that would be, I would put that under our network module, which is kind of our SASE play, where you can, in that distributed workforce environment where you have lots of people connecting from lots of different places, most of them unsecure, most of them on BYOD devices. How do you protect that? Well, you do it via VPN, you do it via some CASB, you do it via some domain protection, or secure web gateway, what are we allowing our folks to access? But in that environment where it's their device, maybe you don't have control over telling them what they can look at, but you at least, at a minimum, want to be able to control how they are reaching out to you to get to your data. So they at least have to put on some sort of a VPN, some sort of secure connection to access the company aspect of that device use. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And you did a few things there. I call it drop in the alphabet, which is dropping all the acronyms, and they keep changing. We could thank Gartner for this. There was CASB, there was SASE, then there was ZTNA. There's all these different things, and I want to try to make that as simple for the non-technical folks that are potentially making these decisions at organizations to understand. I'll give the preface, but I'll kind of hand it off to you to hit it home. But it's, how do you make sure people are who they say they are when they're accessing your network, when they're not there, your remote employees, and how do you, to what level of scrutiny do you want to keep checking on them? Is it every time they log in? Is it every time they open an app? Is it every email they send? And that's sort of in a nutshell, at the super high level, non-technical level, what those acronyms mean.
That's exactly what that is. I mean, you're hired, Daniel. You described it perfectly. It's making sure that Daniel is who he says he is where he says he is, and that he's doing what he should be doing and what he says he's doing, right? That's it. And so we want to, there are lots of different tools. There are lots of, I love the drop in the alphabet. That was hilarious. There are lots of different alphabet, that we can drop there, but that's all it is how do we ensure that it is our people touching our data and doing with our data what they should be doing with it. That's all it is. There are lots of different ways that you can slice and dice that. There are lots of different areas within that will be important to some businesses, not as important to others. But that goes back to the modularity of the platform of, okay, you pick and choose your own adventure here. Where are you at right now? That could evolve next year. That could evolve next month. We can change then. But what's important to you now? What do we have to protect at this stage in the game? And then let's start there. And then, we can grow into this as we need to, but we've got to start somewhere, and we've got to protect what your users are doing and how they're sharing that data.
Yeah, and it's important to say that this is not I'm buying a camera and I would like the protection plan and I would like the lens and I would like the camera and I would like the zoom angle and all that stuff. This is not, you don't go to Coro and say, I want this and I want this and I want this. You have these conversations with David and you have it with Leo and other resources that will help you determine what you need. And then that's when you start going by the alphabet and you start kind of piecing together what it is that works for you. So don't feel overwhelmed if you're a customer or client watching this and you own a business of 20 to 100 people and you're like, well, I don't know which one to choose. Well, that's why you come and you come and talk to somebody like myself and David, because we'll help you get there. We'll help you choose what works for you.
I mean, as I said, it's extremely flexible. It's like, it is a bespoke, security environment. Like, we're here to tailor this to you. We're not here to sell you the platform. We can if you want everything, but the reality is not many people buy everything, because not everyone needs everything, right? Let's start where you are. And for most people, that is, the short answer to that, for most people, that's going to be those 4 areas that we keep harping on. It's going to be the email. It's going to be endpoints, the devices. It's going to be data, the thing that every hacker wants to steal from you. And then it's going to be the cloud environment. I think the biggest misconception, because a lot of people that are listening to this, they probably have something for endpoint, even if it's just like McAfee, right? They have something that's kind of sort of maybe working. They probably have something for email, even if they don't have like a phishing, they probably have some sort of spam filter, maybe. But a lot of people don't do anything for their data, which is super critical. But the other thing that people don't even think about is the cloud side. Like, when you're working in Office 365, in Azure, in SharePoint, or when you're working in Google Sheets, Google Workplace, or even in Salesforce in your CRM or anything like that, do you think that data is protected? And would you, like, Daniel, from your perspective, is that protected from your standpoint?
For me, I know it's protected at Salesforce's data centers, right? That's connected, but is it connected in transit? Is it connected between the person at home who's accessing it versus at the office? I think that's the question you're getting at, right?
And it's not. And, Microsoft and Google, and in these other, CRMs and cloud providers have said, that's not our job. It's not our job to protect your users or encrypt your data. And so people, I think, have this tendency to say, oh, I'm working in my cloud environment, then that's inherently secure, right? And it's just not. And that
right.
is
it's somebody robbing the mailman. That's what it is.
It's someone robbing the mail. You're saying, that's exactly it. And that is such a simple thing that we can immediately impact and immediately secure for clients. And I don't want to speak for your clients or people listening here, but I would say, in my experience, 9 out of 10 people are doing nothing. They don't even think about that aspect of their business today.
Yeah. I personally didn't even have a VPN until I was shopping for wedding rings for my wife during COVID. Because
you didn't want that popping up on your wife's cell phone?
No, it was. I'm shopping for engagement rings on Blue Nile or something like that. And it was like that peak COVID. It was like 9 months into it, and she's getting the ads for it. And she's like, oh, look at this. Because we were talking about it. And I'm like, oh, well, no, I'm going to curse on this podcast. I can't do that. But I'm like, that's when I went out and got a VPN. But luckily, I also got back invited to the office and went pick up the diamond on the one day that I was invited back to the new office where I was allowed to go in. That's a whole nother story in and of itself. But good segue into more of the personal conversation. And you mentioned some stuff earlier, and this is why I love that I set this podcast up the way it is, because you can't be more transparent than it is. This is going out to the channel folk, the folks that are selling Coro, folks that are supporting it, as well as the clients. There's something in it for everybody, right? That's the end game. But this is why I wanted to have these conversations all in a single pane of glass. All, there's no boundaries here. So I want to talk about the partner community now, because there's no secret out there. The people are what drives the business, because Coro could be great, David could be not. Luckily, he happens to be a great guy.
Probably not. Coro's pretty good.
I don't know. The guy named McLeod, you could be selling the McDonald's rain, may not be the highest quality rain. Absolutely horrible
They're,
joke,
they're really
but
missing out on a McFlurry flavor, right?
yeah, yeah, I know the rain that'll last forever, no mold. But I wanted to mention a couple of things because one of the simpler things I think it is to be, a channel account manager and support partners like myself. For the clients who are listening, I'm a partner. David is the supplier, and his role is to support me and supporting you as end clients. But David does something I think it's very simple. Every day, sends me an email about the meeting that's upcoming in the day, and that may seem like it's not a big deal, but you'd be surprised on how infrequent that you see that in a support role. And it shows me that he's very much on top of what's happening. He's not coming into the call 3 minutes beforehand and he doesn't know what's going on. It shows me he's organized. And that I just want to ask David about his philosophy around how staying productive, putting these systems in place, which he clearly has, helps him support both his clients and his partners.
Oh, that's a very nice thing to say. Usually, most people send my emails directly to their spam folder, Daniel. That's great. But no, it's something that I started when I was at Ally. When all of us are super busy, and especially now that we're working from home. And this is an embarrassing story, but I'll give you this example. This happened to me on Friday. I work from home, as most people do, and I'm the only one working from my house. My wife goes into the office. So during the day, I'm like, super trophy husband. I'll like put in a load of laundry or do some dishes or something like that. And I went to go. It's so embarrassing. This 100% true. I'm not going to tell the guy's name, but I'm usually very, on time. If I'm running late, I'll shoot an email saying, "Hey, sorry, I'm caught up in a call. I'll be there 2 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever." But I completely blew by this because I was folding I went to change some laundry. I was like, "Oh, I'll just fold it while I'm up here." But generally speaking, I try to be very on top of my day. The first thing I do in the morning is I look at all my meetings, and somewhere between 7 and 8 o'clock, I'll usually send out just an email to those folks. So like, hey, hey Daniel, good morning. Looking forward to talking to you at 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock. And to me, that's just like an easy reminder to you, because you also, we might have scheduled this meeting a week before or 2 weeks before, or you might have had something come up in your day. And that gives you a chance to be like, oh, shoot, David, I'd love to talk to you, but I got to take care of this thing. I'm so sorry. Can we reschedule? Right. And that's no big deal. Like that's fine. Like we all have things come up, but it's
the Southern hospitality of email. I think that's what that is.
but it just helps. Like it just helps jog people's memories. It also is a reminder for me, because I'm looking ahead to, and I didn't even think about it from that perspective until you said that. But yeah, like I look at these emails, I'm like, okay, what are we talking about today? What is the meeting for? Like, because I need to be prepared. So I wasn't really thinking of it from my side, but I guess subconsciously that's exactly what I'm doing. But yeah, that's something that I picked up. And I think a lot of us, when we're working from home, we get a ton of things thrown on our calendar that are not really mission critical or may not even pertain to us. And especially like a lot of internal meetings, and there's a lot of noise that comes up. And so when you look at your calendar, like sometimes it's overwhelming. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm in meetings from 7:30 to 6:30. That can't be right. Like no breaks, no food, no nothing. But a lot of that is just kind of noise, right? Yeah. So to have that kind of that just quick reminder of, oh, this is something that I need to do. This is something important. This is something we both want to talk about. I don't know. And then worst case scenario, like, oh shoot, I do want to talk about this, but I can't today. Like, cause our days change. That's just a little thing that I started doing years and years ago when I was at Allied, and it served me well. So I kind of forget that I do it, but yeah, that's usually what I do every morning.
Well, now you fold laundry and prep for your call. So
no, I can't do that anymore because that messes up my time management.
You had to sacrifice one for the other.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to alternate and train in different areas. Well, is there anything else? I'm sure there is, and I like to leave this kind of part of the conversation just generally vague, because I like to ask about people's career success. Obviously, you were with Windstream and Allied, a couple of places more telecom focused prior to coming into cybersecurity. I'll give you the floor to freely speak on either question or both. What was something that you learned from a mentor or a business lesson that means something to you, the fundamental level of how you do business and how you've been successful? And then maybe something on the differences or between telecom and cybersecurity, choose either or and get at it.
Okay. Good question. Both of them good questions. So I've been very fortunate to work with a lot of great people in my career. And I think some of it is your own kind of perspective. Every boss has different things that are important to them and different ways that they're going to want you to communicate. Just like, you've heard everyone talk about the 5 love languages, like in a personal life with you and your wife, like how you receive love, how you receive like validation, and how you feel supported is going to be potentially different than how she does. And knowing that you need to communicate in the way that not that you would necessarily maybe by default communicate, but in the way that is going to be the most valuable and the most impactable for her to see, for her to feel and seen, heard. And I think bosses are like that too. Every relationship's like that. So every boss has like different things that are on that list of, some are more analytical. I want to see reports. Some are more like kind of all over the place. You have to kind of keep them, focus. And then some are like more micromanaged. It just depends on the boss you have. So I was very fortunate at Allied. I was there for about a decade. And because we were a small company, there was just a lot of ebb and flow. And I counted it up one time. I'm going to say the number wrong, but I had something like 9 or 10 different managers and like 5 or 6 different directors while I was there. So a lot of different work styles, a lot of different management styles, a lot of different bosses. And like, in that environment, you got a job to do. You got to do your job, but you've also got to make sure that the people that, you're reporting up to feel are getting what they need from you. So yes, that's kind of given me a lot of experience, and that, like, I try to be open to everyone I work with. I try to always, I'm a very direct person. I'm not going to send a lot of emails. I'm not going to send a lot of Slack messages. I want to know the people that I'm working with. Like the first thing I did when I came to Coro is I try to introduce myself to everyone in the organization, find out what they do, find out what their role is with me, and find out what they like about what we're doing and what they don't like. Where's the friction? Because in order for a salesperson to be effective, I read a stat in like McKinsey or something years ago that the most successful salespeople, it doesn't come down to the process. It doesn't come down to the product. It doesn't come down to like years of experience. The one thing that defines salespeople is how many relationships they have internally in their organization. Who can I go to get things done for my clients, for my partners? Who's going to want to pick up the phone call and help me when they see it's my caller ID? So I start there, and I try to, you heard that in the call that we talked about in this meeting today. Like you try to always treat people as people first, right? And the business things are important. The problems that we're working on are real, but what's important to you, Daniel? Like what's important to, your wife in this ecosystem that you have built? Because if we don't start there, the other stuff doesn't matter. I'll mention one other thing that I read. I read this in the newspaper, which I know is like an anachronism. They don't exist anymore, but I read it in the newspaper and it stuck with me. The article said, don't ever send an email that you don't want printed on the front page of a newspaper. And for whatever reason, that has just always stood out in my mind. Sometimes when people do things that I don't like, or they send something they shouldn't send, or I want to respond a certain way, I'll write the email that I want to send and I'll send it to myself. And then I'll look at that and I'll say, boy, I'm glad I didn't send it. or some very, very rarely I might be like, no, this is important. I need to have this, but it's a conversation. It's not an email, right? I need to reach out and talk to this person about what's going on. But yeah, philosophy wise, I don't know. Nobody has all the answers, but those are just like little things that,
I think that's a great philosophy. You encapsulated it's being a human being. And being interested in people and just not just the end solutions. You're getting to know what's important to them, even how you're measured when you talk
Kind
to
of like
somebody.
dating, right? I mean, yeah, it's you're feeling each other out. Like
What's
how
your scorecard look like? Funny story. It was actually in our wedding vows, and my wife said she literally wrote a list the year before we met, and she wrote down the things that she wanted. And apparently I met the check boxes on that list. And
must have been a short list.
yeah, short list. Yeah. Very, very one-dimensional, indynamic person. But actually, the real reason why I landed my wife is because I made her filet mignon on our first date.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
All in on day one. I love that.
yeah, well, I won't make myself sound too great because she likes to rag on me because I came outside my house when she came over and I welcomed her into my house wearing socks outside, and she also told me that in our vows that I was never allowed to do that again.
Yeah, socks and flip flops, or just straight socks?
Just straight socks. I came out and come on in my socks. Yeah, I'm a
Did you
very
take
take
your
me as
socks
I
off
am type
when you got
person.
inside, though? Did you
I
like?
did not. I did not. I am guilty as charged there. So
Oh man,
we started on a genuine level. That was,
yeah,
she found out that a clean floor wasn't apparently as important as it should be, and now my floors are clean. So
exactly.
lesson learned.
The pans were clean that you were cooking in. The floor,
Yeah.
together you took care of that. That's great.
Luckily, the pan sauce, made up for it, and the tomato and mozzarella with basil and the imported olive oil from Italy was.
Oh man, this sounds
took it home.
delicious. Gotta be
Yeah.
lunchtime soon.
It is lunchtime, actually. I don't want to make this too long of a view for people. I'm sure we'll get together and we'll do another one. But any closing remarks, David?
None at all. Daniel, it's been a pleasure talking with you. I appreciate you having me on. I don't think this is going to be the lowest viewership of any of the ones you've done so far. I just want to apologize to you right up front.
I don't know. I don't think so. I think it was a great conversation, but thanks for coming on.
Hey, you bet. You bet. Talk to you soon.
You got it.
See ya.